All right, we're live on Facebook and YouTube. We're going to put our intro on and allow people time to come in and share out to the network. If these shows resonate with you, please share as we contend with the algorithms every day. But we don't let that stop us. How's it going, everybody? We got a great show starting off the week. We're going to get to know a new beloved sister that I've never met before. And let me just get the information up here. 1 second. So we have a new sister that we haven't met before, and that's not unusual here at Soulology One Studios, where we do everything on the intuitive, creative, imaginative, and courageous, depending on what we're talking about or doing. Let me just finish. I didn't do my job. Let me finish sharing this out. I'm going to read a bio. I don't usually read the bios, but this one's pretty interesting. Our guest is Stephanie Amora Danylko, and she submitted a bio. She said she just made it up as it came, which is the best way. She says, "It is humanity's birthright to be united as a free people. In a free world, many have and are agreeing to take this leap of faith, to do what must be done in order for that to come into fruition. I am one of the many. We are the guardians of the future, free, united people in a free world. I am calling to other guardians to come together to hold space for one another as we continue to shed that in which is not really who we are, as we step in this role in guiding and teaching this process of opening and letting go, in order to be a free people, to collaborate in our ideas and visions in however it unfolds. It is in allowing ourselves to be seen and heard that we find one another." So that fits right in with our philosophy here at Soulology, where we feel that the highest activations, transmissions, and downloads and code exchange come from having conversations like this. So let me get Stephanie up here and let's get to know her. First show of the week. We got a big week planned. Should be exciting. Let me see. All right, unmute. Okay. I can hear you. Can't see you.
Okay, let me just.
It's okay. There should be a little note that says start video.
Okay.
And just click that. Yeah, there you go.
Perfect.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
How are you doing? What's happening?
A lot better now. You are right. You're very calm, and Morgan was right in saying that about you. Thank you, Morgan, as well.
Yeah. People think it's just me, but it's not. It's 50%, possibly more of her than it is me. I just have to show up and talk to people. So, yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for coming in and sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence.
Thank you.
There's an old famous question, about 1,850 shows now. I think we'll be at 2,000 by the end of June. But and I don't ask it all the time anymore, but I don't know you, and we're going to get to know each other now. And that is, when did you wake up?
That's an interesting question, because initially, literally before these last 3 days, my idea of waking up was a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And over the last 8 years of myself working through this process, it has only been since my son came back into my home 5 weeks ago that being with him and working together has opened both of us up into new realities and more awareness. And so now this waking up process for me is more like waking up to see reality for what it really is, not what we believe is true, not all of the goings on, that none of this is really real. And the ways in which that we could work through this and the things that we can do in order to let go of the fear that is being pushed on us from so many different levels.
Right on. How old is your son?
He's 20.
Oh, wow. So this might be my favorite answer of 1,850 shows. I don't know how many times I've asked it, but I like that because it's such a one of the I think the takeaways that we have that's more and more clear to us each day that we go through this transition called ascension, is that whatever we knew, when we wake up the next day, it's like everything's gone. Like you're starting over from a completely erased, chalkboard.
Exactly.
Now, you made a really interesting comment. You said that until 3 days ago. So that's, to me, speaks very plainly about the level of awakening that we're all going through, and how whatever we thought we knew kind of goes out the window. But this is interesting, and you can talk about it in as much depth as you're comfortable with. I don't want to I'm not trying to impose on you,
No, no.
but just, can you give us like a general idea of what this 3 days has been like in the relationship, the evolution of the relationship that has seemed to occur based on what you're saying between you and your son, and how it served you both?
Okay. First, I think it's important to just go back a little bit. So, with my son, he was diagnosed 3 years ago with schizoaffective disorder,
Hmm.
and he had spent 3 months in psychosis. He was very ill, and it was unsafe for him to be in the home with me. And so he has decided a few months ago, and we had talked together about getting off his medication and moving forward in that way of natural healing. So this was something that he really wanted to do, because the medications, he was on 4 of them, one of them was an injection,
Hmm.
and they were very strong. And what was happening was he wasn't able to feel anything. And for the most part, he wasn't able to speak. He wasn't able to speak from his heart. He wasn't able to connect with himself on any level, and therefore with anyone else.
Wow.
And so 5 weeks ago, with what was happening, I went to pick him up and I said, we're going to go sliding. So we live in Canada, we have snow here. And when I picked him up, he had said no, he couldn't go. He was in so much fear, and his fear was causing sickness in him. And I just said, Nathan, watch this. And I went up to him and I held him very tightly, and I was whispering in his ear, saying what he needed to hear. And from that day forward, unknowingly, he literally just moved into the house. And so at first it was a process. I was a very solitary human. I had pulled back quite a bit, not knowing, from just feeling so much of the world, and not being able to handle that, the sadness that I was feeling. And And so this process with my son, with his own awakening, has been quite literally awe-inspiring. When I listen to him and when he reads his words to me, and I see this light shining in his eyes that was never there before. It is
Wow.
like a light behind that goes out, and I see that he is a pillar for everybody,
Yeah.
just as we all are when we choose to step forward. And 3 days ago was the day that I had surrendered. I surrendered, and one of the hardest things for me to do was I accepted everything. I accepted everything that's happening in the world, and I brought everything into my heart, and I let go. And this has been a process that I've been going through, that I could not do before that. I could not accept the pain witnessing what is being inflicted on others.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, and 3 days ago, I gave in, accepted, and brought that in. And now I'm seeing everything differently, and I'm seeing how easy that it could really be for all of us. And the ones that choose to step up, the more that choose to step up and let go and go into this process, the more that we raise each other up and go into a whole different level of consciousness.
Yes. Yes. I resonate with so much that you're saying. Yeah, I think, first of all, the coming together of two people, whether they just meet or, in the physical, or they've had a 20-year relationship, uh, they're, whatever's happening, we're helping each other. We're removing blockages and crossing thresholds. There's some type of reaction happening. This is what I'm getting like when I'm talking to you about what's happened here. Also, I mean, I think it's pretty common knowledge that the indigenous and the indigenous and Aboriginal uh, early civilizations that have still survived, Maori and that type of thing, they looked at tribe members that we would call mentally afflicted, and they created space for them. They revered
Mhm.
them. They allowed them to live in their, well, really, because they were walking in two worlds. And I think, having had some experience with a family member who was diagnosed with something similar, it is a very difficult thing to try to deal with that type of situation. At least it has been in this world. I think the energies, as your example is proving, are starting to support their tremendous value, like they served in these Aboriginal and uh, indigenous cultures. So that's a great thing to hear from you. Also, I think too that situations like this, I think, are occurring real time, similar to what you and your son have experienced. There seems to be a collective expansion of universal energy supporting us in our own expansion. Does that? I'm not really sure what you do, if you're an energy practitioner, or if you connect, because I know you write some really good stuff. But what are your feelings on the collective as things stands right now? Given the experience that you've had over the last 3 or 4 days.
Well, what I'm seeing right now is there are different realities that are happening right now. There are certain people, many people that are still living in a fear-based reality that cannot see this, and they cannot feel this kind of peace and calm until they choose to let go. And it's really, really important that we allow for ourselves in all of our discomfort to be seen and to be heard, so that we could be a voice, and so that they could find that our voice, because we really need to step up to support all of these people that are coming up. And what I'm seeing, like we're really understanding that the old world structure and the agreements that have been happening behind the government, that is over, and that
Yeah.
is finished.
Yeah.
And the reason why everything looks so chaotic right now, there's so much love coming from the consciousness of the planet right now, that the planet has never been conscious before until very, very recently. And that has allowed the consciousness for humanity, if we choose to tap into the earth and to ourselves, for that to come up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so as the love comes forward in that way, everything looks more chaotic, but
Mm.
that's not really true. We're seeing what has always been there, but we're actually seeing now it's no longer being hidden from us.
Yeah.
And so it's nothing to actually fear. It's to witness and stay, for us to stay in that love into our center, and knowing that we really are supported with all that is, with the source of all things. If people choose to call that God or source energy, it really doesn't matter.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I hear you. And then also taking into account what you just talked about over the last 3 days on a personal level, do you think, and there's no right or wrong, I'm just curious what your perspective is. Do you think that part of that finding peace, and this is beyond a cliche and just a new ageism, what I'm about to say, but do you think that finding that peace is accepting everything, as it might be said, without judgment, or as an observer, and just to be more specific, to kind of to accept all points of light and all points of dark, of what we know and don't know, to include what some might refer to as evil? Do you think that this is a place that we're all headed to, or that brings us that peace?
Um, so to answer what you had first said about judgment, it is absolutely imperative. It is imperative for us to let go of all the ideas that we held with judgment,
Mm.
and really knowing and understanding that the more that we judge everything that is outside of us, that really is a direct reflection of what is inside of us, mirroring that we are judging ourselves. And so
Mm.
when we're in that space, there is no peace. When we're in that space, there is no contentment, because there's still that battle going on. And the more that we're in that space, the uncomfortableness that people feel here in their chest, that
Mm.
uncomfortableness is the higher parts of them, the future parts of them, the beauty of them wanting to come out. And the longer that people choose to hold on to these old ideas, old beliefs, old ways of thinking and being and behaviors and patterns, that it will be more uncomfortable, because we just need to let go to find
Mm.
that peace.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally align with what you're saying. And then and of course the kicker is that not only if what we're seeing is making us feel this uncomfortableness, eh, because of the reality that it's actually in us, but we're also perpetuating it. It's like
Mhm.
there's a relationship there. It is quantum. So the thoughts that we're carrying forward are creating. And I think one of the big pluses of the last few years is people have begun to really, really dig deep, with a lot of universal support as time's going on, to uncover unconscious prejudices, judgments, bias, traumas, and so much, has been revealed. I think we've done a great job. I think we've actually done a lot better than we think, and and I think we're starting to see the results of our inner work.
Mhm.
Um,
There was something that came to mind as you were speaking, and this is something that really came to me last night as I was falling asleep. And that the thought was, like, going back in time. I think that this is really important to say for people to understand. But going back in time through many millennia, going back to ancient Egypt, that the ones that held the power, the pharaohs and those under them, without the slaves and without the poor people working for them, keeping them in the space that they were in, without that, it's all level. It's level. And so moving forward in time, there was still someone's will going with another's will, and we can look at that with patterns and with war, going back and forth and back and forth. If there was a back but not a forth, it just wouldn't exist at all. It would just stop. And so within our patterns, when we really understand when we try to exercise our will on another, if we just stop that behavior completely, it no longer allows for anyone else's will to be affecting us at all, because we no longer believe that that's even a possibility, because we can only be controlled if we believe that we can be. Otherwise it just ceases to exist.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree with you. Again, I feel like I'm talking to myself. But yeah, because and it's so strange because we've identified so much with our actions, and rightfully so, where we're coming from. But it's like we don't have to protest or boycott or march. This, what you're describing, actually is done right here,
Mm-hmm.
in the universe, or in that infinity between the universe and the universe. And we can claim our sovereignty in any moment, in any place, any time. And when we do that, the pharaohs don't have anything holding them up. So,
Exactly.
you know, I really admire the fact that you're talking strictly, what's happening now, because that's really where it's at. Linear time is by force or flow being removed from the equation and its impression upon us. But I have to ask you, because I'm really intrigued by your level of intel. Um, how did you come to the party? I mean, like, did a lot of people wake up and they have certain divine essences or galactic family come in and serve as an emissary? Some people just speak to one universal
Mm.
voice. I mean, is there anything that kind of stands out for you on your journey in terms of how you accessed infinite intelligence through whatever divine essence, whatever face of the universe?
Yes, there. So my life experiences up until just over 2 years ago, I had actually I could no longer deal with anything, with the way that my life was going. I didn't know how to stop the patterns. I Everything built up to fear, and I didn't know how to stop. And so what happened, people can call it hitting rock bottom or having a nervous breakdown. That's that's what happened. That was really the precipice. And work had me be off work for 2 months. And this woman, this is the interesting thing. There was this woman. Well, I wasn't researching her. I was researching structured water, energetic water. And so the first day that I was off work, I had sent an email to someone. I had no idea who this person was. I found a website. I didn't even know that the website was inactive. But the next day, the fellow had said to me, "I'm sorry, I can't help you, but I forwarded your email to this woman that can." When I opened the email, it was the woman that had created the object for the structured water that I had been researching for 6 months. It was incredible. And we had a 2.5 hour conversation. One of the very first things that she had said to me was, "Stephanie, you have been resisting your own self love." And when she said that, it was at the exact right moment, because the day before, if someone would have said that, I would have said no, got angry, and walked away. But what she said, I almost fell into a puddle of tears, and I surrendered. And so we spoke for 2.5 hours. And then what happened, I came across a woman. Her name was Pam Anderson. And this woman, we we had an experience together. The way that she works is you write down 4 questions. You're on the phone with her. So you speak first and then you go lay down, you put your phone on speakerphone. She's on her phone, she puts it on mute. And then she connects to whom she connects with to find the answers and to get back to me later. So my questions and my statements were profound. And what I had asked for is to be connected to all that is. This, I get emotional when I talk about this.
You're with friends.
Yes.
You're with like-minded people. So don't worry about it.
And so, and to connect with myself. And so from there, especially over the next 2 months, and actually it went on about 6 months, I had these experiences every single night where I would go to bed early before I was tired, because I would know that this is my time for this experience, and all I had to do was to be present.
Yeah.
So everything that I had been holding on to, all the pain of my husband, that was very, very huge. I did not know how to forgive him. I did not know how to let go.
Yes.
And I also didn't know how to accept responsibility and accountability, but that came much later. And I would have these experiences where it didn't matter if my eyes were open or closed. I was somewhere and I was letting go, and there was so much beauty around me. I didn't see, and I think that there was a reason for this, that if I had actually would have seen my angels and my guides, that would have been an addiction for me, that I wouldn't, it would have been extremely difficult for me to let that go in order to get where I am right now. And I know this because I had to let go of all of the addictions that I had. And looking at that from an internal or external perspective, that we hold an addiction onto negativity, onto our negative stories, onto our patterns. All of those things are addictions. How much we talk about our stories, those are addictions as well. And then moving on, in November, I had experienced my heart broke again in a very profound way. And it was at that point where I was told that the support is there, but they would no longer do this work for me. That I had to figure it out on my own. And I had a lot of resistance and pain with that. And that took me from November 2018 until August of 2019. And in 2019, a friend of mine, her name is Carol Nobles, she introduced me to this woman, Dr. Jacqueline Hobbs, who her website is www.oraclegirl.org. And this woman, she calls herself that we all, in our intention of wanting to change, that we called her from the future to come and hold this space. And so what she does right now, she's on a silent immersion. So she's in 80% silence, and she's in Botswana. So what she does is she holds the space. So she does not do anything to us, for us. She holds the space in order for us to do the work.
Yeah.
And so she puts out two tracks every week, Wednesdays and Saturdays. So Wednesdays is free, so you can download it, and then till Saturday's free till Wednesday. And so I've been in this space. It has been a most beautiful, beautiful space. And sorry, I got a little bit lost there. But yes, and then that really takes me to the whole surrendering process.
Yeah. Well, I think it's remarkable for 2 or 3 reasons. One of the reasons I think that it's such it's so helpful to hear people's story without being addicted to the story or attached to the story, uh, especially when they're speaking about it, is because a lot of people are waking up. And they're going through the same thing that people were going through that were doing it 5 years ago, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. And we've had a lot of people on here that have been doing this 20 plus years. Um, I really like the fact that you talked about not seeing the angels and the guides and so on your team because of the likelihood that you would have used the term addiction, we would have become addicted to it, which I think is really great. I usually use the term attachment, but I've noticed it. I had to, I was challenged with that when I woke up. I've seen a lot of people deal with it. I've seen people move from being overly attached or overly identifying with their team to embodying their team and becoming their team, and kind of coming down to a singular voice as the higher self merges with the human aspect. But yeah, I think that's a really good point that you're making. uh, and I used to tell my friends when they were kind of going through their wake ups, I said, well, get over the wow, just move on to the next thing.
Yes,
No, you don't
yes,
know what happened. I'm like, no, I've been there, done that. Don't
yes.
waste your time with that. And then I think the other thing that's really important, what you said, is about responsibility. I think one of the things that people struggle with, including myself, on my journey, was how can you be responsible for these things that happen when you've been the victim,
Mm,
and or been unfairly treated or whatever the case is. And I think too that that's something that takes work. I also like the message
yes.
that the practitioner utilizes in your team, and that is, which is what I always heard: here are the pieces, you go figure it out, you put the puzzle together.
Mm,
And I think that's something that we all, no matter who we are, we all have to do that. That's
yeah.
that's no one's going to do it for us.
One of the things that I think with our team, with the angels and guides, that they are aspects of us. And
Yes.
so while we looked externally at teachers in that sense, that it really was us ourselves that we were looking for all along, and to really understand that, to bring our power in, and to bring all of that into our heart, and understanding that we we are them and they are us, and it is all one.
Yeah. It sounds like you have a pretty good maintenance program going. Like you're on it, which I think a lot of people are. One of the things that people contend with, whether they woke up 20 years ago or 10 or 2 years or whatever, are the energies. The energies being anything external that kind of knocks you off your square. Uh, call it being triggered, call it being just imbalanced.
Mhm.
Does that occur to you? And if so, how do you get back into alignment?
Well, the thing about triggers is it's actually interesting, because it's my schooling took me to the places that really needed to for me to go synchronistically in order to be in flow. And so my schooling is in belief work. And interestingly enough, this is something that originally I thought, being a coach before, and thinking this is something that I can bring forward. But really, the more that we work on ourselves is the more that we're helping others. And when we're helping others, we're helping ourselves. And sorry, okay, can you say your question again? Sorry about that.
Well, like, I mean, because of the fact that you are on it every
Yes,
day,
yes.
yeah,
Okay. So the thing about triggers is actually a very, very beautiful thing,
yeah,
because when we are triggered, as uncomfortable as it makes us, the thing is, it is a belief that is waiting to be exposed, that no longer serves that person. And there's questions that we can ask ourselves in that moment, instead of reacting, to take a step back, like just stop, take a step back,
yeah,
close your eyes, whatever it takes, and just ask yourself, like, what would I have to believe to be true in this moment in order to feel this way? And to be honest, like, I know and understand before in the past, sometimes it is extremely difficult to be honest with ourselves. And when we're not ready, we're not ready. If you can't let go to answer honestly, that was okay. But when you can, and when you write it down, and then you say why, and then you write down the next answer, why, and you just keep writing it until it literally comes to the core belief that was most likely built when you were 4 years old. With me,
Yeah.
like, there a belief came up. So after doing digging and digging, when it came up, I laughed to the point
Mhm.
where this only happened to me once before in my life, and I was pregnant, so I thought it was hormones. But what had happened was I laughed to the point I was hysterical, and then I started to cry,
Mm.
just like really cry. Like, my husband was with me, and he's thinking, like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm processing, just hold this space for me. And it went back and forth, like hysterical crying, and then the laughter. And because when that belief came out, it was so silly and
Mm.
that's why we have all these beliefs that build on top of that as we get older. Because if that was exposed right away, then we would know, well, I really don't believe that. This is very silly, and I
Right.
can let that go.
Right.
And then so what that means, that trigger is gone, and most likely there are many other triggers that are attached onto that too, and it just falls away.
Yeah. 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 That's the real work. I'm married to a shadow eater, and she's got a process she uses. And some people, I've seen many people, expand, including myself, immediately.
Mm.
And then, I've seen some people who kind of resist doing the work, including myself. And but it's so funny because we have these teams, these aspects of ourselves, and all these divine episodes and divine intervention and all this fantastic, magical, otherworldly stuff go on, and it all gets back down to almost the mundane, the human part of us that does the transmutation by doing the work. And
Yes.
again, people can hold space for you, like the lady in Botswana, but
Mm.
they can't do the work for you, just like they can't save
Yeah.
you, and they
Yes.
can't hurt you either. So it kind of all goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting too, what you were saying, because it's not easy to take responsibility. It's not easy to be honest with yourself. It does get easier as time goes on. But the one thing that stands out to me more than anything in your story, which I would have to say I was the same way, and I think most people must be, I've never really thought about it, and that is, if you have the desire, if you don't know what to do, you don't know, where to start. I mean,
Mm.
if you actually have the internal commitment, or you've made up your mind, just like you were talking about at the top of the show, and you make your mind up here. It's nothing you do out here. It's you make your mind up here, then immediately the universe starts to conspire with you, as Paulo Coelho says. But
Yes.
yeah, but I can see that in you. You are committed to you.
The one promise that I made to the universe and to myself was that I agree to this journey. And I had this experience 8 years ago. I was with many people sitting around a fire. I didn't know these people. There was a shaman, a maestro from Peru. He was there. There were some indigenous shamans, and there were some regular folk. And as we were sitting there, I had this, like, we were all just sitting in silence and not speaking. There were some people that were singing. And my question to myself was, I wanted to be shown. And that's what I asked. I asked to be shown. And at first I went into this journey inside of my body, inside of all my organs, inside of my veins. And then from there, I I left my body. I went into this space where there were, the only word that I can call them was light beings. So they had a human form, but they were skinnier and they were taller, and they were just, they were beings of light. And
Mm.
being in this space with them, and I had known that I was them as well.
Yeah.
And the feeling, I can't even, like, our humanness does not allow for us to feel such an expanded form of from our heart of love and everything. We, like, I can only remember in my mind, but I
Mm-hmm.
cannot remember the extent of that feeling. And it was so absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And then I had an experience of a memory, and that memory was in a beautiful light filled space. And this memory was before I was born,
Yeah.
where I was given a choice. I was given, and I'm seeing more and more now, I didn't understand this at the time, where I was given a choice to accept this role that I have agreed to do. And I also remember being told that I would not remember any of it. I wouldn't remember, and I would have to wake myself up. And that goes back to what you were saying, being a victim. How do you take accountability, and how do you take responsibility? And I know with myself, I needed to go through the pain in order to decide that I no longer wanted to go through the pain.
Yeah.
And when we're still maintaining those patterns, it's because we're not willing
Yeah.
to stop and let go. And so even with the pain of my husband, that has been, ongoing for a very long time. The thing is, I allowed myself to be in that situation. But what I also see, I needed him. And I am grateful. I am grateful and thankful to him in this experience. I fully understand that he, at his core, is innocence,
Yeah.
as we all are, innocence and purity within us. And that he is also playing out his role,
Mm.
that I needed to say no more, and that I am also playing a role for him, that he now, at this time, he has a choice. He has a choice to continue with his pattern, with and it's okay, but it would be without me. I will still be there 100% supporting him, and same with my son, but it will not be in this space, because at this time, moving forward, my space needs to be pure.
You're picking yourself. To thine own self be true.
Yes.
You're yeah, and I love what you said too, because so much of our experience we judge by and understandably by our personal interactions throughout our life. And these relationships, the closest circles to us. And when you can get to a point like you're describing and actually see it, not just see it, but actually live it, and say, I know him for who he is and what he is and his part in this. Uh, and and if you then expand that to the entire collective, that seems to me, and that's why I was asking earlier, because that would seem to me the place we'd have to go if we were
Mm-hmm.
actually going to anchor in the
Yes.
energetic heaven on earth. We can't. It's all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There is
Yes.
no in between. But I think you bring up a great point about those, and this may not be the right word for your husband, but I mean, your story is very similar to a lot of people that have come on the show, especially those who are clearly empaths, because they typically have been involved with a narcissist, and had that type of relationship. But to be able to look at somebody and everybody, especially those closest to you that on the surface hurt you the most, and to be able to look at them and see their purity, says a lot about your own inner work.
Thank you. The interesting thing that actually this started to happen in September was I would speak and it did not come from my mind. And I would literally in my mind would be in shock. And in my mind, I would be saying, holy F, holy F, holy F, in my just going, and as I'm speaking in this most calm way. And now it's it has nothing to do with my mind. It just comes forward that this is enough. And when we allow for this space for ourselves, and like you were saying, what we could literally do at this point now is to bring everything into our space, into the space of our heart.
Yeah.
Everybody, all of those that have caused pain, and it doesn't matter, just to bring everyone into this space.
This is good because there's a lot of talk right now about, what's happening in the world or what's being reported, one way or the other. And I'm going to be straight up about it. This narrative of white hats in the deep state and all the, the rescuing of the children and all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes that's evidently being revealed. I see a lot of extreme expressions in the light worker community, some damning those players, those actors, and establishments, and some kind of jumping on a salvation bandwagon. Like I'm over here with the Q team and Trump, and I'm okay. This is, by the way, I've got no charge on any of this, but it's too much. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, for me, it seems like what's worked for individuals is I've done my work and I've been on this path for 8 or 9 years and observed people and interviewed people. It's the inner work that obviously creates the external world. And if we do the inner work, we don't even have to bring the justice. We don't have to do all these 3D external actions, because the energies will take care of itself. It will
Exactly.
take care of itself. The fact that we think we have to say these things, and I'm just as guilty as anyone else, don't get me wrong, but the fact that we think we have to say these things and that we have to do these things and we have to point out the bad guys and we have to raise hell and all that stuff is the evidence that we're actually we're not enslaved to the world or to the 1%. We're enslaved to our belief that we're limited in how we can actually alchemically affect the external world that we all share together. So to me, it's like, and you're living proof, the shadow work, the personal responsibility, the choosing yourself to thine own self be true. This is how we change this world, which is what everybody wants to do. And the great thing about that too is that is an instantaneous, energetic reaction that quickly shows itself in the external world.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
One thing too, it's also important to start to recognize the choices that we make, and even the choices in spending and what we're eating, and to really to look at what we're doing, what we're putting inside of our body, what we're putting inside of our mind in the form of TV. Like I can't watch anything any longer, and this is literally over 3 days ago too. I cannot watch anything that is destructive in any way to go into that story, because when we're watching these things now, and this is so important, like for a lot of people that watch the news, and it goes inside of them, that energy goes inside of them, and then they really feel it, and then they can't even help with how they think and how they feel and how they project themselves onto others.
Yeah.
So it's really important to start to change those choices, and by changing those choices, when it happens collectively, those things cease to exist, because there's no one doing these things anymore. And even with our buying choices, like I didn't know these things to be true until recently, and I don't think that I was ready to know that that they were true, and maybe I did to a point, but I just put that out of my mind.
Yeah.
That like a friend of mine, she had shared a video with me, and this was the chocolate industry, so cacao, and the cacao that's being purchased from Africa, that those are the children that are working over there, those children were paid, and the money given to the families, because those families, it's when, you know, when you have other children to feed, and you're scared that you're going to die because you have no food, and you make this choice, you know, because they feel that there is no other choice, and so they sell their children. And companies like Nestle and Cadbury, this is where the chocolate is coming from. And so when we actually start to understand our buying options and what we're actually doing, then we can stop doing those things, and then there's no market for that anymore.
Yeah.
Like if we look, like when if we look at China and just what's happening over there, like there's concentration camps over there with Muslims, and horrible things are happening. And you know, this is something that happened in World War II, that the world swore we will never let this happen again.
Yeah.
And this is happening. And so just understanding how we're still, if we continue to to buy and to make those choices, you know, from a country, knowing that this is what they're doing, knowing that they're okay with that, then we need to be taking accountability and responsibility as well, that we're buying into this whole pattern and process of what's happening. So that, like, that was my point, to just to be aware and to recognize, to start to give our money to the businesses, you know, that are near and local to us,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
knowing like where that money is going.
Mm.
Because in Peru, the cacao that's being produced there in Peru, it's sustainable. There's beautiful, amazing companies. There's one, it's in Canada, in British Columbia, is called Organic Matters, and they give back, and they talk about what they do to give back to the society in Peru, with the families and with the culture, and how they help them. And this is a beautiful thing, like to spend money knowing
Mm-hmm.
that we're helping the world instead of taking.
Yeah. Well, I think everything is definitely a you know, and carries an energetic impact.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, back to the thing about the to thine own self be true. I mean, what looks one way to one person looks one way to another person. You know, there's 8 billion people. There's 8 billion truths. You know, I guess that's what I'm saying. And those truths are made up. Obviously, they're all the same truth, but they're made up of, you know, a whole bunch of, you know, pyramid blocks, to use your metaphor earlier. But um, you know, it's yeah, that's like a whole nother show because there's also a lot of other histories, you know. And if you look at something from another country's standpoint, I mean, it's just very convoluted. That's why
Mm-hmm.
I love to hear stories about like your story, where you're taking responsibility, and that responsibility for you has carried over into what actions that you make in terms of what you're eating, why you're eating it. You know, what are the repercussions of where you spend your money, and so on. This goes pretty deep, but I think at the
Yes.
very core of it, which is probably what has you know, kind of birthed these epiphanies for you. And like you're talking about the food from the last 3 days, and the different things that have come to you have come from that inner work, you know, that desire. And then you make the list and you do the work,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the courage, which is a big step for many people that I've observed on this path, including me, and that is to say no. I love you. You've been in my life a long time. It's not an FU, but although I probably let a few out, but it's I love you. I'll see you at the after party. You know, unless something changes, and I've, you know, we've all taken enough bullets. We've all taken enough for the team, right?
Yes.
So, but yeah, this is beautiful. Well, I wish you the very best. You're a breath of beautiful, positive, courageous wisdom. sacred
Thank
wisdom
you.
energy, and the best for your son. I know that could be challenging, but it's such a great story, because just in you putting it out there, it's putting forth the reality of that transformational code and that clearer truth. And even though there's 100 people on watching this, it actually affects the entire Earth grid. And this is what you said earlier, and this is what we've been saying for going on 1900 shows, is we need to speak up now. We need to tell about our experience. We need to talk about our emotions and our visitations and our on all the goings on, because there's code in that, and it's not
Yes.
what we're saying. It's in between the lines. It's
Mhm.
that same frequency you had when you had that memory before you were born. That place that we all have been but forgot.
Yes. And
So
thank you, Todd, as well. Thank you for allowing for this channel for so many people, and for allowing for awareness to go out into the world.
absolutely, you're very welcome, and thank you. And thank you everybody for coming in. We have Franco Di Nicola in another hour, another Canadian. Ought to be really good. And I look forward to collaborating with you again if you're open to it.
I am. Thank you very much.
All right. You take care, and best to you and yours.
Thank you.